Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's seminar on the benefits of clean flour, sponsored by Soulanges Mills. Soulanges Mills are creators and producers of specialty flours made from an exceptional blend of wheats from various regions of Canada. These wheats are grown using agriculture raisonné, an approach that incorporates various innovative agricultural practices to help preserve the environment. They develop, produce, and market their flours without improvers that meets the needs of industrial and artisanal bakers and consequently customers as well. Today, we are very lucky to have a few experts join us for this particular seminar. Welcome, Chafik. Chafik Baghdadi is an amazing flour scientist. He is educated in food science engineering from the National School of Agronomy and Food Science in Nancy, France. Chafik has been the research and development manager at Soulanges Mills for 11 years now. With his extensive knowledge of grain chemistry, he is specialized in the development of customized clean label flours and is actively contributing to the involvement of the baking value of Eastern Canadian wheat varieties. Also, we have Elizabeth Vachon today. She has a bachelor's degree in agricultural engineering from McGill University. Elizabeth demonstrated a passion for the environment and agriculture for 20 years by working with organic farmers and those transitioning to organic. So she is a specialist when it comes to understanding crops in transition. Since 2007, she has worked as an agriculture raisonné project coordinator for Soulanges Mills. And I have so many questions about that today. So Elizabeth handles agronomic monitoring and supports growers' transition to organic. And today we have our resident specialist, Mark Floerke. Mark is a bakery application scientist and an accomplished pastry chef who began his 45-year career with an apprenticeship in Germany as a pastry chef. Mark knows his breads. He has gained many experiences in various facets of the industry, from retail bakeries, cafes, to institutions, commercial bakeries, and artisan bakeries, and more. And he has an expert background in technical service, product development, and ingredient research. I just finished writing an article for the pro tip column in bakingbusiness.com. And my first segment was focused on team and the ability of the team leadership to communicate flour quality issues within the plant. Because when you start with clean label, you actually do start with the flour. So this particular messaging from Soulanges Mills is very timely in terms of how Soulanges Mills as a mill communicates its message to its customers. So before we go on to the Q&A table, I would like Mark Floerke to share some experience in terms of working with Soulanges Mills product. Mark?
Yes, happy to. I received, just like you saw in the video, I got some of the, oops, there we go, T65, right? That's always the fun with these backgrounds. Yeah. Getting the right distance. And so the great thing too that I find that is helpful to even say I'll call it the average baker, is when you're buying flour in a bag, because right away you see on the bag protein content, 11.5% plus minus 0.5, falling number, 300 seconds plus minus 20, hydration, 70% plus minus 1, and ash at 65 at plus minus 0.02. And so these are really great guiding values to start off with, even, especially if I'm doing any kind of new formulation and things like that. Where am I going to hydrate and so on. So I thought I wanted to stick with simplicity to just kind of see what this flour does, and just make a basic bread. And so I went with a 70% hydration baguette, where I did a 60-40 poolish. So I did 40% of the flour in a poolish that I fermented for 12 hours, and then produced my dough and everything else like that. My baguette is a little bit on the pale side due to some over fermentation. As I mentioned, we have some really warm weather here, so I don't have the benefits of a controlled proofer here right now. But I got really good expansion, nice shape, everything. They turned out beautiful. It's a mini, just a 200 gram mini demi baguette, right? And got really nice open texture as well, right? And the thing that I like about it also is the color. Even though it's a 65 ash, it's not completely gray like you might see in some high ash type of bread flours. It's a nice creamy yellow color. It's a really beautiful, all the way through the flour, the dough. It just has a really beautiful creamy color. The absorption is really good. So I would, comment that. And before I go to that, I also did some ciabatta buns, did like a miniature bun. And this is at an 80% hydration. And I did also a 60-40, like a 40% flour pre-ferment using a biga at a 55% hydration. So a very stiff pre-ferment, and again, nice open structure, nice soft moist crumb, and these taste fabulous. So they got nice crunch to it. I don't know if you can get that well over the microphone, and it's just beautiful to work with. One of the things I noticed when I opened the flour is just from a feeling perspective, is it feels really fine, nice and almost talcum-like. And so that made me think, is the hydration because of granulation size, or is that because of protein? And without having access to farinograph and things like that, just based on the way the dough handles, the way it absorbs, I'm going to say it's not the protein amount, but it's the protein quality. Because I think a lot of times as bakers, we forget that the only thing that's really absorbing water in the dough is the gluten protein. The starch is just particles where the water is going for a ride on top. So you might get sometimes a little increase in hydration when you have high starch damage, because you have more of these fractions and surface areas to coat. But the true hydration absorption happens in the gluten proteins. And you feel this right away, because a harsh starch damaged dough doesn't have any resilience to it. It doesn't have that elasticity. And so the dough is not bucky. So, it's not like you had a lot of ADA or something added to it. And it's also not soup. It's not like it's got a lot of L-cysteine or a lot of enzymes added and things like that. And so I got, of course, good enzyme activity from my poolish. But it still left me with a really nice, manageable dough. As you see, even your test baker, the way he's handling the dough in the video, because of the lighting, his crumb looks a little bit brighter, but it's a very manageable dough. I'm sure this would machine really well in processing as well. And like I said, I used not even malt, nothing, just salt, yeast, water, and the flour. And I thought it works really well to work with.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for experimental baking for us. How is clean label baking associated with Soulanges Mills, with your mission and values?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna take this question. Actually, the project of Soulanges Mill is sprout out like it's like an idea come up from a farmer, miller, and a baker, and the three of them, like the farmer, it was more organic, and the baker, it was more clean label, and we were in the middle, and we were like helping. The philosophy of Solange Mills is to help the farmer and to help the baker to be more clean, and that's our philosophy, like helping, like for ergonomic side. I'm gonna leave Elizabeth explain that more. It's to help a farmer to get like a best good practices for farming, and for the baker we help them by offering a flour that is adapted for their process, and also for troubleshooting, for product development. That's how our philosophy, and that's how the clean label and our vision match.
Right. And during the video, I had to agree with a lot of comments being said in there in terms of regularity of the bread product and irregularity of wheat varieties. You know, what have you done in that aspect to address your baker's concern of, you know, I can't handle this fluctuation in quality because I need to produce pan bread that's 4 inches high. You know, what solutions has Solanges Mills provided in terms of clean label to really help the bread baker along? Because ultimately, we have to produce some sort of, you know, a shape. You know, it cannot be all irregular. That's our biggest problem.
Exactly. Yeah, the key of that is like to work with varieties. Like the genetic of each variety, it's stable from one year to the other. The fermentation, the fermentation behavior, the absorption level is the same, like from one year to the other, and that's the secret. Like if we have the same blend with the same variety from, we're gonna have the steady quality from one year to the other, from during 1 year. And working with bakers, we start with understanding what they need and what kind of baking process they are following: short fermentation, long fermentation. Are they using any ferment like sourdough or just yeast? By understanding that, and in the same time understanding the varieties, we can match that. Like we said, okay, this process we need that blend of wheat variety, and that's how we avoid any like we help like the baker to avoid any adding any improvers, because the flour, it's adapted for their needs.
Right. And I have always been pushing bakers to consider not only flour quality, but also the age of the flour itself. Now, you know, my question to you is, has Solanges Mills considered aging flour, or do you see aging flour as one of the bigger trends coming on?
Yeah, that's a big concern. Like we like some bakers, they want like to use like a very aged flour. There's others that they want like a very fresh flour. And uh, yeah, we cannot like answer to all these needs, but I believe that's because we have like a steady orders, and also the shelf life, it's quite stable. Like most of the artisanal bakeries, they using like a flour that have 1 week, 2 week shelf life, and or aging time, and that's quite stable. For the industrial, like it's like they are it's a very short.
It's true.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
1, 2, 3 days, and that's
correct.
it's not significant. That's to get this variation due of the aging.
Correct. Mark, what in your experience have you seen in this forefront of probably, aged flower? Because I do think that we need to address, aging as a clean flower option as well. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on it?
aging is often done for different reasons depending on the baker. I'm sorry.
I think
Toby
your
needs
dog
to
wants
there
to
needs to
speak on that
contribute.
as well.
I've seen bakeries who have worked with their millers and aged the flour as long as 6 months. This has less to do with the oxidation effects as it has to do with the natural bleaching effects of the enzymes. What is also being done in that area is the addition of soy flour, as soy flour will provide some of the natural coloration effects in terms of wanting to get a wider crumb. But I think with the trends today, as people with artisan breads are almost even really looking for something more creamy, more ashy, and think less of the bright white crumb, that it becomes less of a concern in that sense. So it's primarily a functionality situation, and yeah, a few days is really not going to make much difference. But it takes time for it to be aerated and for it to oxidize, right? In terms of it having any effect on the gluten. And it can have a bit of a strengthening effect. But if you start off with, as it's talked about in the video, with the nitrogen priority being focused on the quality of the protein rather than the quantity yield, then you really don't require that type of aging anymore. Then it becomes a moot point because it's not going to get you any better.
True. This is a follow-up question from one of the chats. Mark, how is the shelf life of the high ashed flour compared to regular refined wheat flour? Maybe Mark or Chafik can, answer.
The ash won't affect the shelf life. Ash is simply the minerals that are present in the grain. And as is instructed or mentioned in the video too, that these minerals are primarily closer to the bran, the aleuron layer on the outside of the kernel. And so ash is often viewed in combination with protein as an indicator of the amount of protein or the quality of protein outside of other testing. And so a high ash flour tends to often be a higher protein flour. It really doesn't affect shelf life at all. Processing and other ingredients will affect shelf life far more than that.
Okay, Chafik, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, it's a good point, Mark. Like with the T65, we're trying to extract outside of the grain, and in this part of the grain, it's rich on enzyme, rich on ash, and rich on sugar also, and that's during the fermentation. It helps to get more flavor, but also more some acid compound that's help for partially help for the shelf life to increase it, and that's especially for the bakers that's work with long fermentation. They're gonna enhance that, and they're gonna feel that the bread can have a longer shelf life, and also a better taste.
So it is in terms of shelf life, it's helping to retard the starch retrogradation. So
it's more about how the fermentation gonna behave, because these enzymes, there is a sugar that's gonna the fermentation, and also the all the acidic compound that's gonna keep the crumb fresher.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Very good. Yeah.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you might want to take a hit at the next question. In order for bakers to make clean label products, the whole wheat industry must participate. What are the constraints that you have found to set up this value chain?
Well, the value chain starts, of course, with the farmers wanting to produce wheat for human consumption. And I think people come from all over the world in this conference. We have a constraint of supply. We got people interested in producing human consumption wheat over the past 12 years, but we compete with the price of animal wheat being produced in our province in Quebec, Canada. And that is our biggest constraint, because like we have farmers producing really good wheat. And the other constraint I would say is the yield, because to have a good quality wheat for human consumption, we have to compromise on the yield. It's inversely proportionate. So if you have like very high quality, you have less yield. And then if you have less yield, you have less farmers interested in producing. So it's catch-22 kind of thing. So we got we work a lot on trying to have farmers that produce year after year with us, and that are very fond of the project of Moulins Soulanges. And they're not attached just to the price, because now the price is really really high. We're living like a situation like 2008. And so we're working really hard. We have a whole agronomy team on the field going to see the farmers, and so like we have to keep talking about what we're doing and value more like a local produce, even though we export our flowers. But we work more on getting farmers to be proud of what we do, and when they go and buy their bread, it's actually from their wheat. So we work a lot on that line of with our farmers, to assure us a good supply.
Right, and we sometimes forget that we are actually fighting for crops with the animals.
Yeah.
Yep.
We seldom think about that. And if the feed industry is paying more for the wheat crop, then our prices are going to shoot through the roof.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
You got it.
And that's a very important thing, because with the situation, the pandemic situation right now, if we didn't have in our province wheat coming from out west, we'd be out of food for humans. Because we used to have a lot of dairy farmers that convert to cash crops. So yes, it's a big issue.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm aware that in the corn and soy industry, probably something like 75 to 80% of what the farmers produce goes to animal feed. And I'm curious, Elizabeth, if with the trends in local even in culinary, as far as local chefs using local ingredients and things like that, and Solange being somewhat fitting into that trend with the organic and everything else like that, is there also a opportunity or a drive where you contract in advance with the growers to already say, like, we want you to grow 100 acres of our wheat, and then we're going to guarantee a minimum bushel price plus whatever the market contracts at that point that we would do when you work with your bakers? Is that something you guys are also experimenting with or looking at?
We do have, we work only with contracts.
Wow.
So like right now, the farmers are seeding right now, almost a month earlier than usual. So it sounds good. We're crossing our fingers that we won't have a drought. But yeah, we've signed not all of our contracts, but we buy spots. but we certainly are working since the beginning only with contracts with the bakers and the farmers.
That's great. That's super.
Yeah.
That, I mean, that helps give them some incentive, I would think, then,
Yeah.
because it's almost like, I mean, in the US, there's of course all kinds of crop insurance situations and stuff, but it's sort of almost like a crop insurance for them in, like, as you said, hopefully no drought this year.
Yeah. And the other securing thing that we do is that as it was shown in the video and Chafik says, we work with specialty variety. Like we don't just contract for anything, you know, we have our certain brands of varieties of wheat that we work with. And we also work with a lot of winter wheat. And that winter wheat is fabulous for us and fabulous for the farmers because we have 25% increase in yields. And it brings like a very special quality to our flowers. And this year, you know, like since it's winter wheat, it can get winter kill. In Europe, they don't have that problem because they don't have the harsh winter that we have here. But our winter wheat has survived and it's looking fabulous. So we're very happy about that. Yeah, we're just
excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good news.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. How can the consumer contribute to help achieve clean label products in the industry? And this question is to all of you.
Yeah, I can say that's the customer or the final client. He has to be has more requirement about like the taste, the ingredient that is inside. Like sometimes like the customer looks the bread like for a shape, for the height, and that's a lot of constraint for the baker. And I saw some bakers that they start like clean, and because of the requirement of the customer, they switch and they start like adding improvers just like to get the bread that fill up the bag and have the same size. And that's our role. Like we and the role the baker, we have to educate the customer, and because he has the power to buy things, and he had to select the clean products. And that's how the industry gonna shift. And we're seeing that in organic industry, because people are asking for organic, for clean. The industry is shifting for the organic. I think that's how the customer can the end consumer can contribute on clean label products.
I think in adding to what Chafik has said is that it's you know, the consumer needs to be educated, and I think it's also up to the industry, the bakers, you know, to some extent the millers, to educate the consumer as well, so that the consumer is armed with sound information to make the demands that I want cleaner products. You know, I just for fun, I put clean flour in quotation marks in Google, and everything else comes up about how to clean your flour bench, how to clean flour out of your clothing, everything. I mean, so, you know, it's another sign of, you know, just how BAKERpedia was created, that there's a lot of bad information out there, or lack of good information, I should say, right? And so in helping the consumer understand what this means, that a lot of these other things that, you know, not getting into the debates about azote carbonamide as to whether it's flip-flops or not, right? But is it even necessary? Yes, it was a great crutch when we got rid of potassium bromate, but do we still need it? Do we really, you know, with everything, with how much science has progressed in these areas, is helping the consumer understand these things so they can make those demands and those expectations. And because I've seen firsthand, as you know, making products, that it doesn't always have to be exactly the same size. As long as the quality and the taste is there, people appreciate the craftsmanship, they appreciate the taste and the quality, and being consistent, right? Other than, don't burn them one week and make them Jamaican breads and then have pale Norwegian breads the next, right? But things like that, and it's there's so much to be said for these things as far as once the consumer understands what to expect and what to ask for, because there is a lot of misinformation, and we need to sell it in a sense that, saying something that is non-GMO, clean label is great, but what does that mean? First of all, a majority of consumers really do not know that there isn't genetically modified wheat. It's just not commercially produced. It doesn't make sense, right? And to basically the same way the breads are described in the video, the same way when I describe things, how the openness of the crumb and and what that flavor is like, those sour notes. Is it a fermented note? Is it a type of sour note or bitter, or is it more nutty or roasted and toasted and things like that? And these are all things that we need to, as the scientists in us, need to sometimes take that cap off a little bit and help the bakers to understand how to sell the product, how to describe it, and educate the consumer that way as well. Because there still will be a need for the low-cost sliced white bread, but even that can be improved upon in flavor and appearance with minimal cost impact. Because really, what does it cost the baker to make a loaf of bread like that? 20 cents maybe, right? And there's so much room for improvement in those areas.
That's true. Elizabeth.
And yes, and I would add that there's a lot of labels out there, and a lot of them don't really, mean anything to the normal consumer that goes and buys for the price. And like our label, agriculture raisonnée, sustainable agriculture, will get maybe 10% of the population. But if you write like GMO free, glyphosate free, like pesticide free, then it's gonna maybe catch more. But there are not like industrial bakers that are ready to put that label like on it, because for their own reasons. But and that's what we're always explaining what agriculture raisonnée means and sustainable agriculture. And what we do is real. We reduce the pesticide use in the environment by a lot. And we do more than the government, in that sense that we really, really, really apply and follow the farmers. We have 300 farmers. We visit them maybe twice a year, and we compile everything they put in their field. We do stats, we do a lot, and it's very hard to bring to the consumer without a label. And the label is our only way that we have right now. But I think it's a mixture of these things, that not ready to pay, but also misinformation, and it doesn't, the consumer doesn't know what means agriculture raisonnée from the first time.
Yes, I would like to add to that as well, that when I was at a very large bun manufacturing facility, our customers, bakers, commercial bakers, our customers really didn't know and really didn't care. All they cared about is the price of the product, and it needs to look that way, right? And as a baker, we need to always cater to that, right? But at the same time, that's what R&D for. R&D is for looking ahead, is for understanding, hey, but in 2 years, our end consumer is going to tell us they don't want monodiglycerides. They don't want potassium bromate, even though these are legal. Right? They are going to push the baker to use a solution that is going to solve that issue. And this is why it's more important than ever for bakers to understand. It's important to train your team, to innovate within your team to teach them what it looks like to bake cleanly. Even though your customer is not asking for it right now, they are going to ask for it in 2 years. So the focus should be on clean, and the innovation and the R&D strategies within your team needs to really look at what it means to run cleanly. I would go for number one, look at your flour. Right? Flour quality is more important when you go clean. And that is a discussion that needs to be had with the miller. Okay, number two, make sure that your processing equipment, your process holds more margin for error, more fermentation, you know, a better way to store and keep your flour. Also, you know, less stress machines, you know, more gentle machines, you know, those kind of things. And lastly, is the quality. What do you do on the quality side to make your bread softer, you know, more regular and have a longer shelf life and stay soft as well. So a lot of education and training has to continue on the baker side of things. And that's why, you know, we have these seminars, is to make sure that we keep bakers up to date on this latest technology. Now that Soulanges Mills is probably the only innovative leader in pushing this clean aspect of things, we want to really share that message with the bakers. Okay. Jane asks, in the video, it claimed that the recommended clean label flour, which is mercury-free, and the other two claims, does it mean that the traditional refined wheat flour is not mercury-free and is not those, you know, free of those claims?
No, actually, we emphasize that because we went through a process for the certification. There is a movement of clean label project, and we were sending the flour. They are testing all different the chemicals, pesticides, toxins, like something it's more than organic, because in organic you see only pesticides, and you don't see heavy metals, you don't see other compound. And we went through that, and we wanted to emphasize, like, just to ask to the bakers or our customer to check about that also, because people doesn't think about those things like heavy metals. There is some heavy metals that's our kids are eating, and also the customer are eating. That's why we want to emphasize that. And I like the clean label project movement, because they are checking like most of those harmful compounds. And with the marketing department, we wanted like just to flag that, to say, okay, we check the pesticide, but also we have checked the heavy metals.
Interesting. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, we have come to the end of the question queue. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chafik, Mark, and Elizabeth, for joining me today and addressing the clean label trend. I would like to provide a special shout out to Soulanges Mills. Thanks to Soulanges Mills, and thank you for sharing your experts on this special topic on clean label flour.